had another meeting scheduled and got canceled.
Okay, well, as long as people signed up, even if they're not here for the presentation, then they'll get the materials afterwards, and they can always contact me and say, you know, let's meet, whatever we need to do to get it going. We now also have I don't know what to call it, partnership or affiliate or something like that in the state of Montana, in the Helena area, which was very exciting. It was someone who was a snowbird in Arizona, and she heard what they were doing in Maricopa County and went back to Helena and said, we should do this too. And then just last week, I had somebody from Pinellas County in Florida reach out to find out whether it would work down there too. Being the snarky person that I am, I said, I'm sure it would. But you might have a few more issues than the rest of us do.
Exactly.
And, Missouri also, Platte County and St. Louis in Missouri are also interested.
That is, and so they're hearing about it through the LWV?
I think so, or from one another. You know what? I think that's something that I say during this is that all you need to do is start with one thing in one place,
right,
and feel confident, and it grows. It doesn't grow automatically or quickly. You know, you have to keep doing research or outreach, but at this point, it's growing geometrically from this end. So the same thing, you know, can happen to you. All right, I'm not going to wait any longer. I'm just going to jump right in. And you've already kind of introduced yourselves to each other, but just for a half a second, tell us where you're from and what got you started on this. Judith, how about you start? You're muted. Thank you. I'm so glad you do that and not just me.
I do go by Judy, so I probably should change it.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm from Washington State. I'm in the Seattle area, and Barbara's got me started on this. And I signed up for one of your first trainings, and I said, this is fabulous. So here I am, really excited to get it going.
Great. Joan, how about you?
I'm in New Jersey, Plainfield area, and I got in, I'm not sure. Oh, because I wanted to do something about voting, and I happened to be at another meeting, and Sheila Mazer was there, and she said, this is what we're doing. Why don't you look at this? And that's how it happened.
See, word of mouth, right? Mary? Mary? Oh, okay.
Yes. I guess through a lot of different conversations that I've been having with different people that I've met, I heard this past a couple of years ago. So this is really the midterms were the first time that I had time enough to get involved with a campaign other than just writing a check. And through there, I met some people. And why is her name why did her name leave my head? The one who's
okay. My mother says it'll percolate up.
Maggie, yes, Maggie. So through those efforts, I met Maggie, and I mean, I've never met her in person, but you know, we've talked and
conversed, yeah.
So she sort of put this out as something that might be interesting, and so I like working with young people, and I thought this would be a great.
Awesome. Awesome. I don't know if you're aware of it, but you are breaking up a little bit. So if you have trouble hearing us, just let me know and I'll fill you in later on whatever you miss.
Fine. I'm in Rahway, bad internet.
Funny, I was just the two students who wrote our digital literacy unit, which is just being piloted now. One of them said to me, you know, around here, we don't have any problem with the lack of access to internet. I said, oh, wait a minute. You don't know. First of all, I live in a really an area that's surrounded by some pretty low income towns and cities. And I said, the kids that I work with have to use their data on their phones in order to access the internet. And that's expensive unless they can get to the library, which is what they try to do, but you can't always do that, you know. So there is inequity in terms of broadband access.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So kids, my young people learned something from me today. Usually it's the other way around. Lauren, how about you? Where are you from and what got you connected?
I am in the Seattle area, and I just kind of got involved. I joined the league here, and then was invited to join this committee, our youth committee, and am very excited about the things that are going on and anxious to get involved.
Awesome. Okay, and Barbara?
Hello. So yeah, Judy, Lauren, and I are all on the youth committee in the Seattle King County League, along with some other folks. And we started past fall, and we plan to adapt all 7 modules, the fighting for the vote and fighting for the change, and then offer them out here in the Seattle King County area to high schools to start with, along with some other programs. So that's why we're here.
That's awesome. Okay. I was expecting 15, but 6 works really well because we get lots of conversation in. The first thing that I want to do is to share something with you that I know I didn't share the last time. There is a page on our website, which is energizingyoungvoters.com. I don't know why our little screen is showing up. If that gets in the way, let me know and I'll move it. On the What We Do, there is a League of Women Voters page. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, don't get dizzy while I'm doing this, there is a steps to startup checklist. And even little boxes just to help you kind of take it step by step by step as you're beginning to implement something. And if you look real closely, you'll see that I've got the number 1 highlighted in each one of the first 3 items. And that's because we have learned from experience not to bite off more than we can chew to begin with. That it's really, really important to do one thing in one place, with one teacher or moderator or whatever, club supervisor, community organizer or leader, and really feel comfortable with it before you individually take on a second one. So that said, doesn't mean that if you're a league and you've got 12 people who are all working on the committee, that each one of you can't take something different or work in pairs. And that's even better. And each one of you become familiar with one thing so that you can then promote that and be the team that goes in to teach that, or get other people to work with you who become the presenters. But as I said right at the beginning, we started literally with 1 lesson, which was very white at that time. And we went into 1 classroom. We approached 5 different schools in underrepresented areas here in Monmouth County. We got into the first one. We taught the timeline of suffrage, this, like I said, this very white version. Got into 2 other schools and then a 3rd one. So we were 4 out of the 5 school districts that we tried to make entrees into. And we did some pre and post testing. And that taught us that that lesson, even in its original form, had a huge impact on kids' intention to vote, because they saw what a struggle it had been in order to get the right to vote. We quickly added a 2nd module to that, which helped them see the percentages of turnout in the different groups. That's in the Truth About Turnout one. And when we did those 2 together, it was even more impressive because not only were kids intending to vote in major elections like presidential elections, and they didn't at that point even know about midterms, but by the end of those two, which was about 80 to 90 minutes of instruction, almost everyone in those classes that we went into said they intended to vote in every single kind of election, which, as you know, when you know about voter turnout in things other than presidential elections, is remarkable. The thing that really is really intriguing to me is that after the 2020 election, well, backing up, we had to change everything to remote online presence and teach remotely. And now we're back in the classroom in person. But we did the remote work prior to the 2020 election. So, we think, well, we did the best that we could. Tufts University has an organization within it called Circle, and they analyze youth voter turnout. And they analyzed the turnout by state and by age group. So they looked at the 18 to 24-year-old turnout, and they found that the mean increase in youth voter turnout across the country was 50%. That's phenomenal. And that ranged from a low of about 23% up to 67%. New Jersey was the 67%. So I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I contacted them to ask them if they could break it down further by county, and they said they would, but then they got involved in other projects. So I had our intern take a look at the New Jersey voter turnout by county. He couldn't find it disaggregated by age group, but he did find general turnout. And he compared every single county in New Jersey, and the county that had the greatest increase in turnout in a midterm election was Monmouth County. And that was where we were working. So with those two things in mind, we know we need to do some legitimate research and find out if that intention to vote actually did result in voter turnout in those two elections. And then what I'd really like to know is, does it also impact them when they're voting in municipal and Board of Education elections and even gubernatorial elections, because nobody knew what that was. They didn't even know that they had a different senator in Washington than they did in Trenton. I mean, things that we kind of take for we just assume that people know is really not information that's has sunk in. Even if they've heard it, it hasn't sunk in. So back to this can take you through step by step by step, and just keep your goals modest to begin with. Don't worry, it will grow, but feel successful. So that's on the League of Women Voters page, all the way down at the bottom, as I said. But what we're going to work through today is what found in the educators and community groups. And I know that many of you have already been there and have already looked at the lessons themselves. So you know that you can scroll down and see the very brief description of each lesson. And then you can click on the view module, and you will see folders that have the materials in it that you want. We're going to go through the high school and the college level version today. We did learn that we needed to pare it down for middle school. So I'll show you, there is a middle school version. Maybe I'll show you. There it is. The middle school version actually combines what's your issue with I am the change, which is the next step. And it teaches kids how to contact legislators in a formal manner, which many kids don't know how to do. So it's a step below what we ask high school and college kids to do, but it's still very valuable information. So we're going to go back to the high school and college version. You know that there's a script, and I will tell you, I keep trying to keep the numbers on the scripts synchronized with the numbers in the slideshow itself. Sometimes it doesn't work, but I keep trying. If you see that it doesn't, feel free to make whatever changes you need to make it work for you. The one piece of guidance that I would give you is when you're presenting is to stick to the script, but that doesn't mean you can't modify it for your group. What it means is don't get lost in the weeds, don't get so passionate about something that you take off on a tangent and you don't reach the major goals of the lesson. And I'll give you an example. We were doing the timeline of suffrage, and one of our presenters had a father who had fought in World War II and brought his medals in to show what he had done at that time, which really had no connection to what they were teaching. And the kids didn't react. The kids really, when we evaluated it, they really did not like that particular lesson as a result. So we know that the stuff that is in the lessons now has specific goals and that the kids see the value of it. And by the end of it, you've got kids who are engaged. So that's what I mean when I say stick to the script. The other half of that is, depending on where you are, your population is going to be different. I even need to do this. If I go into a school in Newark, I am not going to present it exactly the same way, anything exactly the same way as I would do it if I were in an upper class community in Monmouth County. Those kids come to school with different frames of reference. And so what I try to do is to adapt it to match who they are and where they are. Particularly in something like what's your issue? When the kids identify issues that in Newark, they are identifying things that are part of their daily lives that are terrifying to them and that they really want to work to fix. When I do something in a more affluent community here in Monmouth County, I'm very likely to get things like the environment as the thing that they most care about, partly because we're right by the ocean and there are, issues there too. But they don't have the same day-to-day challenges that the kids in the inner city do. So I just adjusted for that frame of reference. We've got people here from the state of Washington. That's going to be very different from New Jersey. We have people from Arizona who are working in Maricopa County in particular, and also with people on reservations right outside of Phoenix. That's going to be a very different population, and best what that population is. I have no way of being able to say to you, this is the way you should do it. So you need to make judgments on your own and feel free to make those adaptations. So people have said to me, well, how do I do that? So I'm going to go through a very nuts and bolts thing with you right now. When you look at these on the website, you are not going to be able to make changes right on the slideshow that's there, but you can make a copy. All you need to do is go to File and then go to Download. Don't go to Make a Copy. And then you can download it as a PowerPoint presentation if you're more comfortable using PowerPoint, which many people are. If you're comfortable using Google Slides, then you can go to Make a Copy and make a copy of the entire presentation for yourself. And then just name it your league or name it the school that you're going into, whatever is going to work for you. And that way you can make any changes that you want. If you're using the script, you're not going to be using PowerPoint. You'd be using Word. You'd modify it to a Word document. If you're using Google, you would go from Make a Copy in Google Docs. Does that make sense to you, or do you have any questions about how to do that? Okay, also, since there are so few of us, please feel free to just kind of jump in. Don't feel like you have to raise your hand or anything like that. Okay. So you will also see here that I've hidden certain slides. That's because in this particular case, this slide is an intellectual property agreement. We're not asking you to sign anything or anything like that, but we're asking you to please adhere to certain guidelines. For example, if you make a change, please double check that you're totally accurate. have somebody, I mean, really do the research, because you don't want to be claiming something is true and have the league name on it and then have it be proven false. So really double check the accuracy. The other thing you need to be very careful of, and I can speak from experience because we've been fined, is the images that you use have to be free of copyright. There are two ways that I have found that it's easy to do that. The League of Women Voters US has a Flickr account with a license. So we are free to use anything that's in the Flickr account that the league holds, and you can get at that through their website. I also use Google Images a lot. And when you do that, there is a little bar called Tools at the top. Actually, let me show you that. So I am going to be looking for an image of Plainfield High School. Those of you in that area. All right, so here's a picture. I want to use that one. All right, this is a stock image. So I need to see, all right, sorry about that. That's not going to work. I'm just going to do high school. Images, here we go. All right, so here are high school images. So let's say I want to be sure that there's no copyright. You see that little sign up there that says tools? When you click on it, right underneath it, there's a thing that says usage rights with a drop-down menu. Right now, you are seeing all of the images that Google has. But if you click on Creative Commons, it will filter it and only give you the images that are copyright free. So that's tools. So tools, usage rights, Creative Commons license. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, back to the slides. All right, you are not allowed, or we ask you not to remove any markings, like any of our copyright markings. They were made at different periods of time. So some of them belong to the Monmouth County League, some of them belong directly to Energizing Young Voters. The reason we do that is so we know who's responsible should we get fined again. So if you put your own league's name down there, we know to come and find you and help us solve the problem. Okay. There are presenters notes, and in this particular one, we give you the so what, and that's what we ask ourselves before we write any single lesson, like, who cares? Why is this important? And we get kids' input on this. So the things that are down here are things that the students from high school on up through college have felt is important for them to learn. So that's where the so what's come from. In this one, there are video clips, and that requires you to do something different than you might normally do if you're just sharing your screen. So now I have not done it yet, and I can't show you this. So you're going to have to practice it on your own. But I'm going to stop sharing. And then when I hit the share screen button, in the lower left-hand corner, there are two little boxes that pop up. One says share sound, and the other one says optimize for video clips. And once you do that, once you click those, then the person at the other end of the presentation, I don't know what that is going to be able to see what it is, whoops, that you're see and hear what you're showing. When we taught this solely remotely, we had to use the bells and whistles that were available to us. You can still use some of those when you're making an in-person presentation. So if you think you want to try the fun stuff, the directions are in slide 4. You don't have to use that. You can do it, just a straight up teaching presentation, but you have that available to you. I would suggest you play around with it because I think you're going to see that it really is fun and it certainly keeps the kids engaged. So, all right. So now you're going to experience this, I hope, the way the kids do. You know that the scripts that are available to you have exact wording that you can use if you are not totally familiar with what's going on. At this point in time, I'm pretty familiar with it, but I'm going to try to make myself use what's in here so you can hear it. So for this, first of all, it would be the opening slide, so I skipped that, but there's an introduction for the League of Women Voters. And we make the point, especially with the things in the Fighting for Change suite, that the League is nonpartisan, and that means we don't take parties, we don't take a position on parties, and we don't take a position on candidates. The League also fights for democracy. And when they do that, they do take positions. And right now, our positions tend to lean more left than right. That has not always been the case. There have been times in our history when we leaned much further right than left. So it goes back and forth depending on what the grassroots membership believes. And there's a vote taken in order to decide on those positions. But we're working with young people. So we decided that we couldn't do that. It wasn't fair. It wouldn't be right for us to walk in and say, okay, this is our position on something. This is what we're recommending you believe. Instead, it's our job to help the children, the young people, identify the issues that are most pressing to them, and then take the position that aligns with their closely held values. It's not our job to teach them those values. They already have them. They have them from their parents, they have them from their pastors and their rabbis and their, I forget who it is, that the imam. They have them just from other people, other kids, but they've already, even middle schoolers, have a set of values that it's not our job to impose upon. So through this whole thing, we say all of these lessons in Fighting for Change is that we are issue agnostic. We will not take a position. We will help you determine your position. We will help you decide how you can use the democratic processes in order to bring about what you believe the future should be like. So that's our promise to them, and that is what I would ask of you as well. Now, does it always work? No.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, but how do you, I mean, they're not all going to agree on the issues in the classroom.
That's right.
So, is there information on best ways to navigate keeping their debates maybe to a minimum, or guiding those debates? I mean, I'd like to honor them.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I'll let you answer that, if you will.
That's a great question. Yes, there is. Whenever we teach one of these things, should something like that come up, for example, this morning, the teachers who were teaching this particular lesson asked who were some leaders in today's world that they admired. And one student said Donald Trump, one of the first ones, jumped right out. And some of the other kids in the class went, oh, So the teacher went, time out, Here's a new lesson that we have to learn, that in our country, people do have different opinions, and they are entitled to that opinion. That is something that is guaranteed to us by our Constitution. It's something that keeps our country strong. And we need to respond to other people politely and civilly. We need to make sure that we are listening to really understand why they think that, and not feel like we have to agree with it, but just try to really understand them. And we also have a responsibility to express our personal opinions, but we have to learn to do it in a way that is going to let somebody else hear us and not stick their fingers in their ears and say, I don't want to listen to this. So that is a message that we keep getting across, that discussion is important. Discussion is something that we need to learn how to do well. It doesn't come naturally. And we can guide kids by just interrupting and saying, that's your opinion. There are other opinions as well. And that's what I started to say before. When I said it doesn't always work that way, I have worked with a woman who was passionate about her particular issue. And when one of the kids brought that issue up in this lesson, she was just gushing. I said, all right, hold on. That is her opinion and she is entitled to that. But there's another side. And then I presented the other side to that issue, which really makes me think. I have to make sure that I am truly expressing well what the opposing or what another opinion would be on that particular topic. It got very touchy right after Roe v. Wade. There were kids in the classroom who were really adamantly just terribly upset about what had happened, and others who felt like, yeah, this is the way it should be. So moderating discussions like that, the key is this is a country that has been built on disagreement. We have to learn how to listen and understand what other people's positions are in order to try to work towards a middle ground or a common ground. You'll see in this lesson, we have an example of that when we do it in person about teaching that people listen to understand, and it may even change your opinion, but it doesn't have to. Okay, does that answer your question? I think that was Judy, right?
Yes, no, it was Lauren, but yes.
Oh, it was Lauren. Okay. All right. Any other questions about that before we go on to the actual lesson? Okay. All right. So these are the video clips, and this is why you need to check those two boxes. If you don't check them, the people in the audience will not hear them. So over the course of time, there have been young people who have been very passionate and who have worked and demonstrated not just on a local level, but also on a national level around things that are critical issues. And they have shown leadership that makes us understand the importance of what they're fighting for, the importance of what they're working towards. These four people are young people. And each one of them is concerned about a different issue. They take a position on those issues, but we're going to listen to them not for the issue, not for their position on the issue, but we're going to try to identify some of the leadership traits that we see in each one of them. So I'm going to play each video. It's about a minute, and I want you to make a note for yourself about what are some of the leadership qualities that you see in that person, and what are some of the personality characteristics that are coming through that allow them to be successful. So that's leadership characteristics and personal qualities that you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to play Greta first.
Greta, your first climate strike was a lonely event a little over a year ago. And in the intervening time, you have sparked the interest of millions, literally, of children around the globe, demanding action for climate change. What's your message to world leaders today?
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Okay, make a note for yourself about personality characteristics and leadership qualities that you noticed in her. Okay, and the next one is David Hogg.
President Trump acknowledged Wednesday that gun deaths are a public health emergency, but he sent mixed messages on background checks in recent days. Now, some survivors of the February 2018 shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida are introducing their own plan for sweeping gun control legislation. Our Paula Reed spoke with David Hogg, a survivor of the shooting and one of the founders of the March for Our Lives movement. She asked him about the group's proposal.
What we're asking for is a gun licensing and registration system with annual licensing fees. What we're asking for is mental health services in our communities to address the 2/3 of gun deaths that are suicides in mainly rural and suburban areas that are never talked about when it comes to gun violence. And making sure that we're able to have a real conversation about making sure that the people that shouldn't have guns in the first place can't get them, and also reducing the overall demand and appeal for weapons and violence in the United States.
Okay, again, personal qualities and leadership characteristics. Okay, and the next one is Ashton Mota.
We need to ask ourselves, how decent are we really? Not in our intent, but in our actions, our lack of actions. This past fall, my transgender community in Massachusetts and I were hit with an unfortunate ballot question that questioned our right to live our lives authentically. I think that it's fair to say that this past summer was not easy for me. Dealing with all of the twisted stories being spun about the LGBTQ+ community by the media surrounding the election was not healthy for a 14-year-old. But over time, I realized that focusing on the negativity was not going to ensure that my human rights would be upheld. So, with MLK in mind, I decided to get up and move. In September, I began working with the Yes on 3 campaign, where I spoke at fundraisers, rallies, press conferences, and on panels regarding the upcoming election and how it would impact me as an individual and our community as a whole.
Again, personal qualities, leadership qualities that you noticed. And then the last one is Naomi Osaka.
I have 7, and it's quite sad that 7 masks isn't enough for the amount of names, so hopefully I'll get to the finals and you can see all of them. Me, I just want to spread awareness. Like, I'm aware that tennis is watched all over the world, and maybe that there's someone that doesn't know, Breonna Taylor's story. So maybe they'll like Google it after or something. And like, I feel like the more the people know this story, then the more, interesting or interested they'll become in it. I have 7, and it's quite sad that.
Okay, again. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can talk to one another. Okay, while you're finishing up, I have started to do something different when I teach this. I have very tiny sticky pads. They're like 2 by 2 inches or something of that sort. And I give each one of the kids one of the pads to start when I start the lesson. And I ask them to write those leadership qualities on a pad. So if it's the same leadership quality, they can write the same word down. And then if they're sitting at tables, after all 4 of these, I ask them to stick their leadership qualities right to the table. So nobody knows who's late, you know, who has written what thing. And then I ask them to take a look at them and to try to sort them, to stick on top of one another words that are similar, so that, because you'll see that some leadership qualities tend to stick out. You know, there are many kids who will pick something up, and then there will be outliers that are left. And then I ask them to talk about what leadership qualities seem to be important in those people and how do they differ, because they're not all the same. There are very different people who can all be leaders. And that's the point we're trying to get across, is that you don't have to be a Greta Thunberg or a David Hogg or a Naomi Osaka or whatever. So at any rate, what have you come up with? Unmute yourselves, please, and tell me what you've said as leadership qualities. Anybody want to start?
One of the things that I noticed was, I don't know whether, I mean, certainly there's a passion, but it's more of a keenness, you know, a focus maybe.
Okay.
That they're very focused on what they're talking about.
That's a good observation. What about some of the other things that you noticed?
I noticed that it wasn't just generalizations. Almost all of them had a specific
Yep.
thing they wanted to get across, specific things that they're upset about and or are part of their issue. And the other thing is, Greta was the most emotional, but everybody else was very calm, even though you could see the emotion on their face, but they weren't hysterical. None of them were, you know, the way you can see people arguing these days.
That's really a good point. And there was one time when I used this, and it was with 8th graders. And the kids began to laugh when I played the Greta one. And one of the teachers stepped up and said, hold on a second, folks. This is somebody who is really young, who is speaking in front of the United Nations. How many of you would have the courage to do that? And how many of you would have the courage to do that in a language that was not your first language? And boy, did it shut the kids down. You know, I mean, it just made them sit back and say, oh, yeah, you know, okay, so she was emotional. She probably had a right to be. I thought it was a wonderful experience to have the teacher step in like that. And I do encourage teachers to do that kind of thing too, because they know their kids better too. So what else did you
I think
notice?
I think they
No.
also had a specific ask, and they all presented it in different ways. Like Greta was like, I'm challenging you. You better step up and do this. Whereas David was like, well, we're asking. He was much, you know, he was still, there was an ask. Every one of them had a specific ask, but the way that their intonation of how they articulated their ask was a little bit different. But I think it kind of went with their personalities. So it held together for me.
Right.
Yeah. So, and Judy, did you have something different from what everybody else has said?
Not really, but I was thinking that all 4 of them are sort of what I would call in the swamp. That they really they know where they want to head, but they're not quite sure how they're going to get there. And that's one of the qualities I see in a good leader is they bring people along with them, but they may not be controlling an exact direction that you go. And so particularly with Ashton, I mean, she was sharing a personal story and she was jumping in and she has no idea where this is going to go, but she
14 years old.
yeah. And she is out there saying something's got to change,
Right.
you know, and those kind of leaders are really fun to watch because they're not so, they don't have something that they're trying to control like the military leader or something like that. They're really fun to be.
They're
to work with.
influencers.
Yeah.
Barbara, how about you? Did you have something you want to add?
Just, I agree with all the other comments that were made. To me, they stick out a little bit. I think they're pretty organized. I know that varies in degree between them, certainly as individuals. But you know, I think, and also the platform that they were speaking on, right? I mean, someone was giving a talk, and so obviously they prepared a speech and all that, where Naomi was just, it sounded like a very casual conversation. But, you know, I don't know. I still think you need to be able to get your thoughts together and present them for others to hear you and then to follow on. So, yeah.
Okay, really, really good observations. And believe it or not, you would get some of the same kinds of observations from the kids. And I try not to impose my, oh, that's a wonderful idea or whatever. I just kind of acknowledge what people are saying because I don't want to discourage somebody from not feeling like they have the same high level idea that the person before them did. Okay. All right. So that leads into the next question. And normally I show this screen while we're having that discussion. So I'm going to go on to the next one. So the next question is, what is your issue? You've seen some young people who've had some very passionate things that they're committed to, but that's not all there is in the world. And usually I'll ask them first, what are some of the things you care about? And then I'll say, these are some of the things that have other students your age have come up with. Some of them feel jobs are an issue, racial justice, and I don't know why this is sticking up there like that. Healthcare, the environment, immigration, education, war, and then there are many, many more. You have probably followed the news cycle, just like every adult does, and you get passionate about the new thing that comes up every time the news changes. But if you're going to be effective as a leader, you've got to pick the one thing you care most about. It doesn't mean you don't care about the other things, but the one that you are willing to spend some time and energy trying to make a change around. So what I'd like you to do now is to write down, if you could choose just one cause, what is the cause that you would march for? And then you can write that down on your paper too. Okay. This slide has, if you do it remotely, you can do a poll and it comes out on a Google form and you can immediately see where people's positions lie. When I do this in person, I do it one of two ways. The one that I like best is what I'm going to tell you about. The poll says, can leaders exist if no one follows them? And you have a choice of saying yes, no, or maybe, or I don't know, because I can think of things on each side. So I give them a minute to think about it. And then I say, all right, if your answer to that was yes, I want you to stand up and come to this corner of the room. If your answer was no, I want you to go to the opposite corner of the room. And if you're undecided, then I just want you to go in the center of the room. And then I ask them to give me the reasons why they made the decision that they did. And I'll start with the yeses first and remind them that this is a civil discussion. And so they don't need to agree with what the person said, but they're going to listen. They need to understand where that person's position is, because after we've had a chance to hear everybody's position or positions on both sides, they're going to have a chance to change their mind and move their position. So I take 2 or 3 from the yeses. I do the same thing with the nos. And then I ask people in the middle, how come you were undecided? And sometimes those are the most intriguing responses. And then we've listened to all that, and I say, okay, if you've changed your mind because of something that you've heard, you can move to the spot where you think you should be now. And you'll see maybe 2 or 3 kids move around the room, not too many. But it's another example that is visual and physical for them to realize that by having good discussions and by listening to one another, you do get a better understanding, and you might change your mind, or at least you'll find some common ground with somebody. So that's the fun way I do it. Some teachers have them stand at their tables and sit down at the tables, you know, like if you're yes, stand up, tell us why you said that, and then no, stand up. But I like the physical movement if the group size allows for that. And then the next thing is, and this, you talked about this, leaders are really only a part of the picture. Who else is needed? And based on the earlier discussions, sometimes what has come out is that you have to have somebody initiating the, being passionate about it and initiating an activity before you'll get people to follow them. And other people on the no side usually say something like, you know, it's just inherent in the definition. If you're a leader, you've got to have people working with you. So they come up with the term eventually, you need supporters. You don't have to be the leader. You can be the supporter. Both of them are needed in order to make change in our world. This one, when citizens care about an issue, how can they get involved in making a change? Well, some people do something really dramatic, like setting up and actually leading a protest. But there can also be something it's a very small thing to do relative to leading a protest, but just discussing something that was in the news with another person can also be a way to start to get people to think about a different point of view in line with what you believe in. But there's lots of other things that we can put around that circle. So here you can tell I like my sticky notes. I have them write just one other thing that might go on that circle. And then after I've given them time, or when they finish, they can come up and they can stick their sticky note right on one of those X's if we're working on a whiteboard, or on another wall or something if it's, you know, being projected on something that you don't want the sticky notes on. So right now, write down for yourself just one thing you might do in order to start making change. Okay, and again, this is one of those spots where I acknowledge what people are doing, but I don't say something's good or something's bad. And I think that helps kids feel more comfortable. So what did you say? What was something else that you can do?
Contact whoever your representative is, because that's what I do almost daily.
Okay, something else.
Attend like school board meetings or city council meetings, speak up at a call to the audience.
Okay, something else.
Educate myself about the issue so I understand fully what it takes to make changes.
Okay. Barbara or Judy, what have you got?
Organize a group of people around it, just like what we're doing with our youth committee.
Yep.
Yeah.
She's a great organizer. I think one thing I can do, well, can continue to do, I guess, is encourage others, the supporters, be an encouraging voice for supporters, help connect people together so they can do what they want to do.
We could
All
vote.
good ideas. Yeah.
We-
Well, you're gonna see what happens here. Okay, so that's the one that often gets left out, and then we make a point of it at the end. Oh, I don't like this little black bar. I don't know why it does that.
How do you get rid of it?
The one at the top, I could use an X for, but I don't know about this one. Well, at least, all right, I don't know what I did. Okay, so you know your issue, you know some of the things that you can do, but the next question is, where do you start? Because decisions about the issues we care about are made at many different levels. Some of them are made at the national level, others at the state, others at the county, others at the municipal, and others even at the school district. And I'll use the example of the environment. At the national level, laws might be passed that allow or don't allow drilling on national lands. At the state level, there might be commissions set up to study whether or not wind farms off the coast are a good idea. At the county level, money is allocated or not allocated to community colleges. At the school district level, there might be a decision that is made about whether or not to use plastic straws in the cafeteria any longer. And at the municipal level, and I used to say this for the municipal level, but New Jersey has just changed the law and made it a state law recently, that the towns may decide not to allow merchants to use plastic bags. So even if your issue is the environment, you need to think about what specifically you want to see changed, and then what level of government do you need to approach in order to bring about that change. And then we're going to talk a little bit about who the people are. At the national level, we elect the president, but we also elect senators and members of the House of Representatives. And interestingly enough, it is not the president who makes the laws that are going to affect your issue. It is the senators and the people in the assembly who decide what the laws should be. And then they send them to the president to sign them. But the real work happens in the Congress. And those are the people that are elected in midterm elections. The state level is kind of the same. You have a governor, you have a Senate, and you have an assembly. Those senators and assembly people, excuse me, I have to figure out who this is. Oh, there you are, Rebecca, welcome. Okay. So the people on the state level who are your senators are different senators than those who go to Washington, but you still have to elect them. So you need to know who they are and what they stand for. You also have assembly people at the state level, and they get elected every 2 years in New Jersey. So you really need to stay on top of what they're doing. At the city level, you have a mayor and you have a city or a town council in most cases. And those people are elected by you when you vote. And at the school board level and the county level, we have commissioners at the county level and also people like the clerk and the sheriff. And we also at the school board level have members from a community, usually who are elected, not in every single case. Some school boards are appointed members, but in most cases in my state, members are elected to the school board. So you can find out who those people are, who are your representatives, and you have the right to talk to them. You have the right to tell them what you want or what you think they should be doing around your particular issue. Okay, so who are they? How do you find out? Well, you can go to commoncause.com or vote411.com, but I'm going to use Common Cause, and you can find them there. All you need to do is to go to that website and then you put in your address. I'm going to pretend that I didn't put that in before. And click on it and submit it. And what you will see are all of the representatives that you have. So I'm viewing them all. If you were just interested in your local representatives, you can click on that button and I see who my sheriff is, who my commissioners are. If I go to the state level, I see who my senator is and who my representatives are. There's the federal level. And so you can find out who those people are and you can write to them. You can learn what kind of bills they're sponsoring, what they're interested in. You can find out who gives them money. So you know who's being influenced, who they're being influenced by. And there's a lot of other information on this site, but it's one way you can find out who those legislators are. So if you've got your phone and you're not on it and you don't know who all those people are, do it for yourself right now. Put in commoncause.com and then put in your address. And the kids think that's the greatest thing. I tell them to take out their phones and they're like, oh my gosh, no, I'm allowed to use my phone in school. And then to find out what they believe in, you can use Common Cause, but there are other places you can go as well. You can find their social media pages, and I don't know why that thing is in the middle there again. Not sure what's going on with my computer, but you can also find out on legiscan.com all of the people who are on particular committees. So if you know, for example, my senator is Senator Vin Gopal here in New Jersey. He is the head of the Education Committee. So I make it a point to get to know him and to have him know me so that when there are education issues that come up, I know who to go to and he's not hearing from some voice out in the wilderness. The next link that's here that you can go to, I'm not going to go to it right now, is something called a starting point. And what it does is pick issues like the environment, and it has 3 people who lean left and 3 people who lean right who are elected officials. And they get to say, they have a 2-minute block to tell you what their position is. So it's a good way for people to hear both sides of an issue. Because when you're working on something yourself, you not only have to have the accurate and reliable information that you need in order to make a good case for what you want, but it's really helpful to know what the positions are on each side, even the extreme positions, because it allows you to think ahead of time and plan a rebuttal if somebody brings up an argument that you hear in those. So the county, the county, the school board and the city or town are a little bit different. You can contact those legislators that we just talked about using letters, using emails, using phone calls. But the thing that works best when you have an issue that is local, like wanting to not use plastic straws in your school anymore, is to actually go to a school board meeting. You don't even have to say a word. All you need to do is sit there, because nobody goes to those meetings unless there's a big issue. If you go, there is something called a public session during each one of the meetings. And you can speak at that public session about anything that you want to. So if you want to talk to your local school board members about not using plastic straws in the cafeteria, you can write yourself a script. And you can go up to the microphone and you can tell them what you want. You can tell them what you think, and you can give them an ask. They are not going to answer you. You have to understand that they will probably say, we will take that under advisement, but you've made your point. And as I said, just your presence makes a big difference. The same thing is true at the city or the town level. You can go to council meetings and you can sit there. And there is a public session there as well. But again, just your presence can make a difference. You can also find out what's going on by going to the municipal website or the Board of Ed websites, and they all have them. So you can read minutes. You can even go to meetings remotely in most cases now, which is one of the benefits that came from COVID. There are also things called work sessions that occur in between public meetings for both councils and school boards. You are permitted to go to those. You can't speak, but you can listen. And you can listen to try to understand what positions people are taking. And if you do that, then when you go to a public meeting and you want to speak, you already have an idea of what the thinking is like among the members of that group. So you can adjust your argument or your ask depending on what you already know. So that's a way that you can inform yourself about the issue that you care about. Okay, back to you. Most people fall somewhere in between being a really strong leader at some level and somebody who is much more comfortable supporting somebody else. The important thing to take away from that statement is that it's much more effective if you don't try to work all alone. If you try to get other people to work with you, or if you find another group that is already working on your issue and you join that group. Because to make change, both leaders and supporters are needed. And you get to pick the level of involvement you want. And that's going to change at different points in your life. You might have a lot of time during the summer when you're a student, and you might be able to really give your all to something that you care about. But come school or come applying for college or whatever, your time is going to be much more limited. So you don't have to decide to do the same thing all the time. You make your own decisions on your own level of engagement, and you decide whether you're going to be a leader or a supporter. And that's really important to understand. And here's why. When young people, you look into the future, you've told me that it looks pretty dark, that you don't want the future that you see right now. We've all been around a kitchen table or a dining room table, like at a family holiday, and understand that there can be a lot of disagreement about things that are important to you. And if you get down about that, it's not going to be good for your mental health. And it is extremely important to take care of your mental health, because if you don't, you're not going to be any good for anybody. Think back to those people we saw in the beginning. Do you think Greta always found that it was easy for her to make a difference in the world?
No.
How about David or Naomi? The people that you see on this screen have had to make some pretty hard decisions sometimes. And I'd like you to look especially at the three women that are on the right side of the screen. Naomi Osaka hit a point in her career when the press just hounded her and she nearly had a breakdown. So she backed out and she didn't play and she didn't hold press conferences until she got herself to a point where she felt strong again, strong enough to be able to face the crowd and face the press. Simone Biles worked for years to be involved in this last Olympics. When she entered the Olympics, she needed to stop taking her medication for her ADHD. And whether it was that or something else, she got something called the twisties, which happens to gymnasts from time to time when they lose the awareness of their body in space. When you think of the things that she was doing, there is no way she could have performed safely with the twisties. She stopped, she backed out of the competition in order to take care of herself. And the woman in the upper right-hand corner is one of my recent heroes, for quite a number of years now. Her name is Jacinda Ardern. She was the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and she took the job just before COVID hit, and she kept that nation safe during the whole time. And she was well respected and admired during those years. But once things started to get back to normal, the pendulum swung, and she began to have a great deal of criticism come her way. She also has a 6-year-old daughter, and she recognized that it was not only affecting her individually, but her mental health was affecting her daughter. And so she made the very difficult decision to resign from her position as prime minister and let the next person take over. So those are people before you kids who have made hard decisions, but it doesn't mean that the issue goes away. It just means that somebody else will pick up the slack for a while until you're ready to jump back in. So take care of yourself first.
By the time I was 15.
Okay, there is, I'm not sure where the link is. It's somewhere on the screen and I just hit it. But there is a video that you can take a look at yourself, and you can decide if you have enough time, if you want to show it to the kids, about a young woman who was involved back in the civil rights era, and tells her story. All right, I'm going to stop sharing there and see if you have any questions about what we've done so far.
Yeah, wow. Wow.
Does it have an impact on you, even though you're not 14 or 17 or 22?
Yes, I just copied down some things, especially about the Common Cause, because we're trying to track our representative, and that's all in one place, which is.
It is, yeah.
I was thinking that too, Joan, exactly.
Yeah.
How long does this presentation usually take to deliver?
This particular one takes about 40 minutes. This morning, people did it and they said to me, we had 3 minutes left over. That does not usually happen. It's usually pretty close to 40 minutes because that's about the minimum number of minutes that exist in a class period for some schools. If you go into a school and it has block scheduling and you've got 80 minutes to use, you can do 2 programs together and often have an even greater impact. But you do what's going to work for you. So
I haven't looked at it, but do you have timing on the sides, like so that, like, to estimate how long you should let like the discussion go, if you know what I mean?
I don't. If you decide that you want to do that to see how it, what you think it should be, I would appreciate knowing that. I've never found the need for it myself, but that may be because I'm a lifelong teacher and you just kind of learn to do those things intuitively.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that some people that haven't been in the classroom, either weren't teachers or weren't in the classroom, it's sometimes I find, even in regular discussions with adults, letting people just go on and on and on, and how do you nicely move them along? And
right. Sometimes I will say something like, I'm going to give us 1 minute to discuss this, so that you time limit yourself. But I haven't actually checked how long a discussion does go on a particular topic. But that's interesting. Rebecca, welcome. Where are you coming from?
Sorry, I'm multitasking today. I am in Collingswood. I'm actually a teacher at the high school. I also am currently on the League of Women and Voters main and meeting. So apologies. I thought they were the same thing, and they're not the same thing, and that's why I was late.
That's fine. Welcome. And you'll get the recording of the first part, so you haven't missed anything, critical.
Great.
And you can share it with the people who went to the other meeting too.
Okay, great.
Okay. Before I said that, I thought of something I wanted to say, but I'm sure it'll percolate back up. Okay. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. I'm going to go out of this and go back to our website. The second piece is I am the change. And again, there's a description, and basically what I say is this is the practical, the nuts and bolts of how do you do some of the stuff that we just talked about in the former one. In the middle school level, the kids are taught, as I said, the formal email writing to one of their representatives. At the high school level, we get a little more sophisticated. So we've got the same beginning, and you'll notice this time that I have many more of the slides blocked out. Those are there if you need them. If you have not had a chance in a high school or a college class to show those videos of the 4 young leaders, to talk about leaders and supporters, to have people give you some ideas about the kinds of things they can do as, other than running a whole demonstration or, sitting around the table and talking, then those are good to go through as kind of like a quick summary of what's your issue. I wouldn't, in the middle school version, they're already put together. So, but I've hidden them because I'm assuming, because we were doing this, that you've already had that. So we'll start instead at the essential question. And that question is, how do you exercise your power and your knowledge to actually create a change in society, whether that is as a leader or as a supporter? Well, it's something that we call civic action or civic engagement. Civic action is all of the different things that people do to bring about social and political changes. So that's all of those things that were on that circle and more. There are many more. It's a process, doesn't happen overnight, and it requires a plan. You can't just go at this willy-nilly because you're not going to have an effect. So you need to think through what you want to do in order to get the change that you want to see. So this unit or this lesson is called I Am the Change, because IAM is an acronym. We just added the words change because that's from Gandhi's Be the Change You Want to See. The I in the acronym stands for inform. The A stands for act, and the M stands for maintain. And we're going to go through each one of those individually. When we're talking about informing ourselves, you have to make sure that first you use reliable resources. And we're going to show you one of the things you can use, but when you're searching, if you're doing it on the internet, make sure you don't have just one thing that says what you think you want to hear, and make sure you use something like a .gov extension or a .edu or a what's the other one? It's not com, but .org, because you're much more likely to get reliable information from sources like that. You want to make sure you get facts and figures to support whatever it is you want to see happen. And you want to be able to state the problem as clearly as possible. So learn as much as you can, not only about the background, but also about a potential solution, the solution that you think is best, and gather evidence to help other people believe that that solution is best. And most important, have in your mind a picture of what you want to see once your job is done. Make it something observable. Don't have it be something, flowery and off in the wilderness. Make it something really observable. Oops. And then once you've got all that background done, tell others about what you want to do, or find others that are already working on your issue and join them with your background information. Now, this is one of a number of sources that help to analyze media bias. This one comes from Ad Fontes Media, ADFONTES, all one word. And it is a free resource. It is updated monthly, and they analyze webcasts, news, print news, podcasts, TV, just about any kind of media that you can imagine. And they do it in a very specific, very thoughtful, very rigorous manner. if you look at the media bias chart, you will see that across the top, there's a green box. I should get my little sparkly thing here. No, I can't get it on this. I can do it when whoops, sorry about that. Across the top, there's a green box, and the things in that green box are the most reliable sources that exist. And that goes all the way down to the bottom where there's a brown or a red box, and those are the least reliable sources. And so they're spread across from the most down to the least. There are lots of things in the middle. Along the edge, you'll see what those terms mean. So in the green box, it's mostly analysis or a mix of fact and reporting and analysis. The next group down has analysis or a wide variation in reliability. So there's no actual fact reporting there. It's either analysis or it's just not reliable necessarily. The middle one is are sources that give you opinion, and there's a wide variation in the reliability of what they're saying. Lower than that are things that cherry pick, that select incomplete or unfair, or they try to use persuasion or propaganda around issues that are designed to make you try to move one way or the other. And the bottom contains absolutely misleading information, inaccurate information, fabricated information. From left to right, you'll see the most extreme left-leaning sources, and it moves to the centrist, and then it moves to the most extreme on the right. And then we give the kids a couple of exercises. I've blown up the top part, the green part. So one of the sources in here that we know is reliable is the Pew Research Center's information. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at those, what do you call them, the symbols for the things, and find something else that you already are using as a source and write it down privately for yourself. Sorry. Was trying to get that black box going again. There, now you can see it better. And then write down something that you never thought about looking at that might add to your understanding of an issue, maybe from a different perspective than what you normally do. If you're normally right-leaning, choose something from the left that you might be willing to take a look at. And if you're on the left, take something on the right that you might be willing to look at. Notice you're still looking at reliable stuff. It just tends to lean one way or the other. So these are the things that you would probably use to generate your argument. So the next step is we're going to try to target the issue. Now, I'm going to do this with you because I think it's fun and I think you can adapt it to use in the classroom. But this is something called a Jamboard. So what's the change you would most like to see? And we're going to try to state it as the solution that we would like to see. So the thing that you can pick out a sticky note. So I am going to choose mine. I'm going to make you listen to me. So I would like civic learning to be part of every child's education. Okay, that's all fine. Can I see that?
Yes.
If I'm going to make a change from what is now to what that is, what's an in-between step that I might need to take? What would I have to see first?
What kind of civic learning you want?
And can we get an answer or something to that one? And by the way, when you do this remotely, the kids can all grab sticky notes themselves and they're sticking them all over the front of the page. It's really fun. Okay, so what do I want? Personally, let's see, I think it would be a good interim step if we had curriculum that is adopted in our schools statewide. And then the question comes to mind, do I want it to be a single curriculum? Is that fair? Is that going to meet the needs of everybody? I don't know. But maybe if I say there could be standards that every student can achieve before graduation. And if I break that down a little bit more in my head, that means that somebody has to draft those standards and answer the so what question that I love, like who cares? Why is this important? And after that, then there would probably be other things that I could see. So that's some of my thinking, the narrowing it down. All right, so if I have standards that I want to see, how am I going to make that happen? Who do I need to be in touch with?
Department of Education and the.
All right, if I want to see it at the state level, that's where I would have to go.
Right.
So that means I need to find out who is going to be in a position of power.
Right.
And I am going to design my ask for that person. Okay. So what is my ask going to be? First time I talk, I'd love to have you
say, rather than you know, starting from scratch, maybe there is a curriculum that is on the book somewhere that may probably at this point in time is not being used or not being used maybe beyond a high school government class. But it might be a good place to start. And that would be an ask of the state superintendent.
Okay, so I could write a letter to the state superintendent and say, I'm interested in having civics be a part of every child's education. Is there already a curriculum at the state level? Okay, so what you see there is the kid doing this for themselves, trying to drill down until they get something that is actually doable, and they'll get an answer to that. So what the observable thing would be a letter or a statement that would just say yes or no, there is already a curriculum. So it's a very refined, very targeted objective. And that's what we want to do with the kids, because we want them to see they have the power to get there. So that's the use of a Jamboard. You can do the same thing in a classroom, but it's not the fun of the Jamboard. So if you come up with ways that we can do that will be similarly engaging, please share those strategies. Okay. So who makes the decisions at each level of government? In this case, we'd be going to the state level, and it would be the education department. So we've identified that. So then we have to take some kind of action. We've considered what we want to accomplish. We know what we're going to see when that's done. And then we have to decide what we're going to do. So we can do a couple of things, but let's take a look at what one of our students came up with.
Hey guys, my name's Justin. I'm here with St. Edward's University telling you a little bit about contacting your elected representatives. The first thing you need to do is find out who your representatives are. To do that, there's a lot of great websites online, like the one at Common Cause, where you can type in your address or even just your zip code, and they'll tell you all your representatives in the government, whether that be the president all the way down to your local railroad commissioner. After that, you need to figure out who to contact based on your issue. For instance, you wouldn't contact a state representative about immigration policy because that's a federal issue. They can't really do much about that. So you just need to do a little poking around online to figure out where your issue falls on the spectrum, if it's federal, state, or local. After that, you need to decide on the method of communication. Usually the best ones to do are phone calls and letters. A phone call shows that you're interested. If you call in, you might even be given to a full-time staffer that handles the issue, and you could have an informed conversation with them about it. And a letter shows that you took the time to sit down and physically write out your problems, and it's more likely to get you on the office's radar as a concerned citizen. Also, that letter will be photocopied and attached to whatever management database they use for their constituent contacts. They'll attach that photocopied letter to your entry. And then finally, before you go ahead and send it in, I recommend that you look it over and make sure that what you're writing is clear, intelligent, and concise. You don't really want to send anything in that's jumbled or not put together, because it just won't look good, and it's a bad way to start off a relationship with that government office. So on that note, good luck contacting your government representatives, and remember, that's the best way to influence change.
Wow.
I know. Wow is right. These kids are amazing. All right. The other thing that is available to you here is tips on. Oh,
Can I claim my dog as a companion on my
there is an article here on how to be an effective advocate when you're trying to get something passed, so that the kids have a sense of what they need to do to build effective relationships with their legislators and how to communicate with them and so forth. This is something that I would, in the classroom, I would make available to the teacher and ask the teachers to use if the kids are going to continue to work on this particular issue or something similar to it. It's a good resource, that's all. Okay. And who is your legislator is using Common Cause again. Okay, so now you know what you want to say, you know what you want to do, and you know who to say it to. So then what? All right, well, Justin had a number of tips that you could use, and if I were doing this remotely, I would put those tips in the chat box so the kids have them in front of them. I'm just going to leave this up. So the first thing you should do is identify that you are a constituent. So you live in that district and you are going to be a voter, and they are going to want to please you much more. If you don't live in the particular district that is going to be affected by the change that you're asking to see, they might not even look at the letter. So you'd be better off trying to find somebody who does live in the district that needs to be affected by it. So in my case, for example, I might go to find out who it is in Trenton that is the head of the Department of Education, but I might be better starting at my county level and finding out who that person is and talking to them, and then learning from them how to do the networking that I need in order to get to the person that is going to be able to make the decision. So it's the same sort of thing. You're identifying yourself as somebody who lives there and who is going to have a voice there. When you're writing your letter or you're writing a phone script, it's good to have some kind of a personal story, because personal stories have more of an impact than just facts. but you wanted to keep it short and make sure that it is directly tied to the legislation or the change that you want to see. And so my personal story might be that, you know, my kids don't have this education and they simply don't know how to make good decisions about the future that they want to live in. Or it could be something, this is unrelated to my particular topic, but when my daughter recently moved to New Jersey back from DC, she re-registered in order to vote in New Jersey. When she went to vote, her name was not on the poll books. Something had happened that had broken down. She knew she had registered. So because she had a civic background, because of her mother, she knew that she could ask for a provisional ballot. Well, I'm willing to bet you could walk into any classroom today that has not gone through a voting simulation and ask them to explain to you what a provisional ballot is, and they wouldn't have a clue as to what you're talking about. So I would try to work that into maybe a personal story that's much more truncated if I were trying to encourage civic education. You want to keep it brief and straightforward and simple. Bullet points work great. People don't have a lot of time to read it, but you have to be really clear on the action that you want to have happen. So at this point, you have a choice in this program. I want to show you the script, the slides down the side. If you have time, and if your students don't have an understanding of how a bill becomes law, there are a series of slides here that are kind of fun. You know, if you want a bill, then you talk to somebody and get some help in wording it so that there will be a sponsor for a bill. And then which way does it go? Yes, it's, you know, goes off to committee. No, bad idea. You've got to go back to the drawing board and start again. And then down at the bottom, it tells the kids some of the things that they can do at each level in order to try to influence legislation at that level. So it talks about going to committee, coming out of committee, what happens because it has to go through both the House and the Senate. And then it gets to the point where somebody's going to sign it into law, but that doesn't always happen. Now, we have had a company called Connect for Education create an asynchronous digital program that explains that to the kids. And we're trying to get it approved through the league in order to use it and make it available to people through this. That's probably going to be a lengthy process. Nothing is simple when you try to do it, but I'm hoping that that's going to be available because it's really cute. You know, you get to pick and choose, like a choose your own adventure kind of story, what happens when you try to get a bill passed. And then if you don't have the time, that is what I would leave out, because that's the kind of thing that if American government is taught, or if civics of any kind is taught, the kids are probably going to get that in the school. So then we go on to the M in I am, and this is something that many people forget. But let's say you've got what you want. I find out that there is no curriculum. There is going to be curriculum written. It is going to be required. There are going to be standards set, and it is going to be implemented in school districts across the state of New Jersey. I need to go back to those people and thank them. I need to get media coverage about what a wonderful thing that they're doing. You need to talk about it, you know, on social media yourself, or tell family and friends what you've done, and really, you know, get everybody really excited and enthused. And that translates into voting support for a candidate, for example. So it's important to develop that kind of relationship, and the kids need to understand that you can't just go and ask, you also have to give. The other thing you need to do is to keep your eye on the ball, because just because somebody says they're going to do something, it doesn't always happen. And even if it does happen, it might not be exactly what you were thinking you were going to get. And that's why it's good to have that very clear picture in your mind of what you want to see as the outcome. So attend meetings, check causes.com, check your representative's website, check vote411.org, check their particular websites, go to legiscan.com, and there is a legislative outline for every single state in the union that tells you every single bill, Senate and Assembly that is coming up before them. So you can keep track of what's going on. My little black bar again. If something gets stuck, you can communicate again the same way that you did before. But there's also something called ResistBot, and I think they have changed the name of that, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look that up because it sounded too aggressive with the resist part of it and bot. But what it is you register once, you text 50409, and when you're finished with that, you type the word resist, and you'll get a request to fill in some personal information, nothing horrible, nothing that's going to, make you worry. And then you are able to contact any one of your representatives at the federal or the state level by text. So that's something, a little newer. And when you say something that really catches the attention of the people at ResistBot who do this, they will ask you if you want to make this a letter to the editor in your local paper or in another paper, if you want to write an op-ed, and they will help you do that. So it's quite a good resource. So I'm going to check ResistBot myself, and
It came up as ResistBot. And
it did.
Would have changed anything.
Okay. I know there was conversation about that, and I think they should, because maybe now it's been in place too long that they don't want to change it. It's like changing your location when you're a business.
Right.
So, but at any rate, take a look at it. It's effective. I mean, it gets the message through. I'm not going to say it's going to change anybody's mind, but at least you feel good, using it. If you find that it is slipping, then you need to get more people to join your cause, or you need to find groups, because the pressure of numbers works. And then decide on your next step if the action seems to be stalled. Remember at the beginning, we said that civic action is a process. It doesn't always go smoothly, but don't give up. And you decide, like we said before, about your particular position and your particular level of engagement. So this is summary. The I, if you remember, is you're going to get facts and figures, you're going to state your problem clearly, and you're going to state the solution you want to see. So you'll know when it's done. The A is action. What do you need to say? Who needs to hear it? And how do you say it? And the M is, how will the change you want to see really look? What will be observable? And then what's the next step? How do you not lose ground? How do you keep it going? All right, and then this is other stuff. I'm going to go back now because I want to go back to the point where Justin gave his little speech. Okay. So at this point in time, if you have time, one of the things that I've done that I find very effective is to have the kids break into pairs or into small groups, like 3 or no more than that, 3 or 4, I would say maximum, and actually sit down at that point and begin to frame either an email or a phone script or a letter that can be sent to whatever person it is at whatever level it is that they wish to influence. I give them about 5 minutes. to get it started. And then I ask them to share with the other people in their group. And we ask the people in the group to listen for two things. Something that they think is very effective in what the person has written, and a suggestion that they can make to improve whatever is started there. And they go around the group, so look like 1, 2, 3. And that's why I said you don't want to have the groups too big because it will take forever to do it, but 2 or 3 people work. Once the feedback has been given, then they go back to writing again. So you can kind of use this activity. You were asking before about how much time does it take. This is something that you could leave it at that first 5 minutes and then let the teacher pick it up from there, or let the kid pick it up from there. Or you can extend it so that they have more time to talk, they have time to share with a larger group. Whatever you see is going to fit into the time allotted. My personal preference when we do this is to have them actually do that writing, because they walk out saying, I didn't even realize that I could do this. You know? We also make the point very strongly that the feedback that they're asking for is essential. And if they're going to do this for real, they do need to ask for feedback, because that is what is going to make their letter or their phone script or their email, or even if they're going to appear in front of a town council or a school board, it's going to make it much better. They're much more likely to get what they want to see. When they want to write an email, there is a caution that I give them, and that is that, and I've had this happen to me, if you use the website that directly takes you to the representative's office, and if you start to write something in that box, once you send it, it's gone. You do not know what you said. So I strongly recommend that people don't write directly in the box, that they write it on a document first, and then once they are sure that they're saying what they want to say, then copy it and paste it into the email box on the website for the representative. And that way they have a copy, they know what they've said in the past, and the representative has a copy. So I'm going to stop sharing and give you a chance to ask questions. Okay. That's also a lot of talking, and that's why writing the letter or whatever you have them do is a good activity to stick in the middle of there. And like I said, I'm not crazy about the part that tells you how the bill is turned into a law, so I would leave that out if I have to leave something out.
I have a couple of questions. A lot of times it takes a lot more work and time to make something happen. And and so there's, I mean, you know, look how long it took us to get the vote women.
Yep.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that? Because you know, they may want to make a change in the environment, and I just see that might be very disappointing because it doesn't happen right away. And in young people's lives, if it doesn't happen within 7 minutes, it's time to go watch television. Okay, and then the other thing I get concerned about, at least here in Seattle, we have a lot of students, foreign students, who aren't committed to going to our government to make change for us. They're just here for whether they're in high school or in college, they're just here for a short period of time and then they're back in their own country.
So they're like exchange students?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like exchange students, or they're coming over. I don't know about where New Jersey is, but I know at our community colleges, there's a lot of students from foreign countries because the college gets more money for students who are out of state, and they're planning to go back. They're not here with their parents. Their parents are still back in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
South Korea, well, wherever they're from, England. So how do you deal with that?
All right, let's take that one first. I don't face that in New Jersey, at least not in the school districts that we've been in. But I do teach the citizenship preparation classes. And when we start those, we start to frame it as, what is it like in your country? What do you do if you're going to vote? How does it work? So I wonder if you could do the same sort of thing with this and say, maybe you're not going to be here permanently, but let's work through this. And then what is it like in your country? Do you do the same thing, or start with that and then say, see if it's what it's like? Does anybody else have feedback that they can, or a suggestion?
Well, one of the things I'm thinking about with your idea is put in small groups of 2 or 3 students who are from the same country.
Yeah.
And then work in that way. So I'll have to play with it, because we have a lot. In fact, when we go to register people to vote, sometimes students, we can't get hardly any students because they're all from international.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That was
And
another part to your question too.
yeah, what do you do to let them know that it doesn't happen overnight?
Oh, right.
And that they already saw fighting for the vote, so they know how long that took. And I don't want to get them discouraged, particularly if they're going out for something like to make change with guns, gun violence. I don't want them to get discouraged. I want them to be out there fighting for it for a long time.
Maybe I'm brainstorming. So I want feedback on this. One of the things that we have been successful at is having kids try to work on something pretty locally, because it's easier to see the change faster if you do it locally.
Yeah.
So we have one example, which didn't just happen overnight, but our high school in town is located across a very busy road from the parking lot where the seniors park. Yeah. And there are crossing guards, but that doesn't mean that the crossing guards are paid attention to either when people come, flying down this road. So the kids, somebody nearly got killed, and the kids got furious. And they went to the town and they said, you need to do something about this. There were crosswalks. I mean, there were stripes on the thing, but that wasn't enough either. Crosswalks and the crossing guards. So the kids did some research, and they found out that if you installed humps, that traffic had to slow because they didn't want to scrape the bottom of their cars. And as long as they knew the humps were there, they would do that. Of course, you always get some people bounce off the top of them the first time they go through, but they convinced the town to do that. It took them 3 years, but they got that. It still didn't solve the problem. There were still people racing down the street. So they went back to that's what I mean about keeping your eye on the ball. They went back again and they did more research about what else might work to make that crossing safer. And they found that you could install flashing lights. So people are warned ahead of time that this is coming up and there are people crossing, and there's, pedestrian crossing kind of thing. And they finally got them to install that too. So I'm going to say it probably took a total of 5 years, but the kids could see the incremental successes that they had. So I think if you try to focus on something that somebody else has done like that and say it took a while, but they got it, eventually it's pretty safe now. You don't have to freak out.
I immediately thought of that quote about, I just Googled it, a society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. I mean, maybe it resonates for me more at my stage of life than your typical high school student. I still I think, I mean, change has got to start from somewhere.
Yes.
I also think of butterfly power. I think all
Yes,
of us know
butterfly
about
power.
butterfly power is something they start and they graduate and they go on to another state to a university. Doesn't mean what they started stops.
Right.
That the connections they make with other people are really important. The information and just it's butterfly power.
And I guess that sort of speaks to attending to the process and not necessarily the outcome.
Yeah.
Like, how did they move that process along?
Yeah, good one.
Lauren? You're muted, Lauren.
Looking at, what you've been talking in terms of incremental kinds of things, but, getting a response to a letter or having a conversation with a legislator or a school board member or, being able to document as you go can also feel pretty good in terms of, keeping yourself going. And if you find people, some of the decision makers who are in agreement with you, it doesn't mean that they can just push it right through. But, as you start to get discouraged, circling back to them and saying, is there more I could be doing? Just, sort of giving incremental kind of steps to keep yourself, and also having your group,
Yes.
as a cheering section.
Yeah, and your parents and your teachers and your league members and everybody else.
Keep it going. Look at all you've accomplished. Keeping a notebook, keeping a log,
journal of some kind.
Exactly, a journal of some kind. So you've got physical evidence of the work you've been doing and the little accomplishments along the way.
Yeah.
And then maybe turning that over, like in the school setting,
Yeah,
graduating seniors hand it off to the rising seniors.
Yeah, that's a
great idea. I like that. You could make it formal. I mean,
yeah.
Something that this senior class, how I don't know about now, but it used to be that the senior class gave a gift to the school when they left. So you could make this one of the other things that you give to the class that follows up. I love that idea.
Yeah, that's great.
So
yeah, good.
One of the other things that comes to mind is that using examples of other kids' successes. And I can give you two that I know of personally. One, they're both here in New Jersey. One was a group of young kids, high school kids, who decided that they, all this talk about civic engagement is great, but we can't do it because we don't have the time to do it.
Yeah.
And so they worked with our local senator and got him to help them get other people to actually craft and draft a bill and get it on the blind list so that it could be considered in a legislative session. And what they asked for, their visual, was they want 1 day of excused absence per year for high school students to excused absence for sure, so that they're not penalized for it, to engage in some kind of civic action. And it can be up to the school board to determine what fits into that category so that you don't get, like, I don't want kids going out on a, protest march or something like that during school time. But it included things like being a poll worker, going down to Trenton to observe a legislative session with a parent because it's an issue that they care about. So those kinds of things. The argument the kids got back, well, first of all, they only got Democratic support that first year. And so it died in the first legislative session that they submitted it in. But they didn't give up. They went back and realized that they needed to have Republican support as well as Democratic support. So they worked to get that. And once they had that, it was selected from the blind list. It was sent to the Education Committee in both the Senate and the Assembly. And it passed unanimously in the Senate. and it passed unanimously in the assembly, in the education committee in both chambers. The assembly passed it to the state and local government committee, and it has died there. Or I shouldn't say died, it is just sitting there. It's languishing. And it's in the 22-23 legislative session. So if it gets to be December 31st and it's not taken up, then it's going to die again and they'll have to start again. The Senate took it to the floor and it passed unanimously. So the assembly is the roadblock right now. So those are kids who have learned how to use the system over the course of time to make something happen that they thought should happen. One of the arguments that we keep getting, and it just blows my mind that people can be this narrow, but it's like, well, why don't kids do this on the weekend or in the summer or after school or something like that? And I finally said, that's fine if you're privileged. Yeah, you can go after school, maybe, or you can go on the weekend, or you can go during the summer, and you can do some of these things, and that's great. And I really am happy that those people can do it. But if I'm a kid in a city district that has to go home right after school so that I can take care of my siblings, so my parent can work the second or the third job, I don't have that kind of time. And what is happening is that there is a distinct division line between who gets to use the democratic system and who doesn't. And it's still not passed. It's still not moving. And we've had kids who are actually old enough to vote, young people, 18 and 19 years old, in the district where the chairperson of that Senate, state and local government committee is a representative, who go to her, meet with her, and it still hasn't moved. So the kids are now learning. They're going to go to Trenton and testify. They're going down to, so they're learning skills along the way, but they're also learning with cheerleaders behind them. They're learning not to give up.
Right.
And so I think those are stories that you can take with you too. And the other one is a young woman who entered a contest and wrote a song and won about why 16-year-olds should have the right to vote. And she won, so she decided she was going to really work on that here in New Jersey. And over the course of about 3 years now, she's learned that, she's a senior now. She started in her freshman year. She's learned that it is not going to happen on the national level. It's not going to happen on the state level because there's still too much resistance. But she's going town by town. Sound familiar? And she is trying to convince, especially in inner city schools, to convince people that those young students, 16 and 17-year-olds, should have a voice in who gets on their school board. So that's what she's working on right now. So she's learned she had to, make her vision narrower and narrower. But even if she accomplishes that, and she said to me, I was talking to her last night, and she said to me, I'm thinking about going not just the legislative route, I think I'm going to go the judicial route. I said, oh, I said, what are you thinking of doing? She said, well, I think we have a youth group in Newark. She said the youth group has some people that they can turn to who will be pro bono attorneys. And they're going to try to vote and see what happens. I said, I think you better check that with the attorney before you do that. But the fact that she's thinking along those lines, I mean, that's what happens when kids get engaged and they really want to see something happen. Is that going to be?
We have two big law schools in Newark that have free clinics, right? They could probably talk to somebody there.
Sure.
Yeah. So the kid, not every kid is going to do that, obviously. Right. But going into schools and teaching these lessons, you're going to spark somebody. And especially if you go into less frequently represented areas, and this is something you're hearing for the first time, and they begin to believe that they can really do something, you're going to have an enormous impact on the world.
There's your butterfly effect. Yep.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? You mentioned the blind list, and I'm new to the League of Women Voters, and I guess I didn't have my civic education. What did you say that was?
Before each session, or before each legislative session, all of the things that have been proposed as bills to be considered are put on a blind list without the sponsors' names or anything else, just what the content is. And then each one of the committees goes through the blind list and decides what it is that they think is worth considering during that legislative session. And then from those, the selections are made about what is actually going to be discussed in the committee meetings and voted on.
Thanks.
So
I
I
didn't know
learned
that
that too. By working with the kids, I learned that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Because
You can get yourself, you can at least here with Senator Gopal, I got myself on that list so the kids could actually see what it was like. You could probably contact your local representative and see if you can get on yours.
Okay, great.
So, okay, any other questions or? Okay, there's one more thing I want to share with you. This is brand new. We're trying it out. Oh, I'll back up. We have been fortunate enough to have the Equal Opportunity Fund program invite us in to do a pilot with them. So we're doing a whole series of our lessons with the kids in colleges and universities that are there because of the support that the Equal Opportunity Fund has given them. And they need to have a certain number of credits to sustain their standing in that. So these courses count towards those credits. So that's something you might consider if you're not in this area or in New Jersey, those of you in New Jersey and other parts. Community colleges have it and universities have it. The what we tried to do was to create a program for them so that there was like a sequential involvement in the organization. So because they can't all come to every single one of them, what we're doing is at the end of each one, we give them a certificate saying that they've completed that particular course. If they amass 3 certificates, then they become an ambassador for Energizing Young Voters. So they can go out and they can promote what we're doing to other kids in other schools.
That's great.
And they are able to co-present with us when we do it again in their schools, because this is supposed to be a cycle. This is the first time we're doing it. So we're going to hopefully continue to do this over the course of the years that we're allowed to. So by the time the first cycle is finished, we're going to have a group of kids who can work with us or do it for us, which is what I'm really hoping is going to happen.
Well, it gives you such legitimacy too, kids.
Oh, yeah.
Presenting to other kids.
And we're promoting it as, this is going to look great on your job, your resume when you go out for a job, that you have had this leadership position and that sort of thing. And we are also considering doing it with high school kids because it will look good on their college application.
Yeah,
great idea.
So we've designed a little, certificate for them and so on. And at the end now of each of our programs, I am trying, I don't know if I did it on this one yet. Yes, I did. All right. So here is the slide that shows at the end of each one of the programs. And when the kids use the QR code, they're taken to what amounts to an application form. If they're interested in becoming an ambassador, they contact us through that.
Oh,
So we'll see what happens, but I'm hoping that we're going to have a whole cadre of young people who are like Justin and can make videos or whatever they want to do.
Right.
And, helps to spread the word.
wow.
Okay, that's it from my end. If you have anything else, let me know. If not, you get out of class 17 minutes early.
Thank you very much, Pat. Yes.
Very helpful.
Overwhelmed with information. I'm
Yes.
overwhelmed.
Yes.
I just
But-
have to go vegetate for a half hour.
I was gonna say, don't be overwhelmed. Remember take one little chunk of it and just focus on the thing that
Right.
was most intriguing to you during the day tonight.
Really, Judy, I'm just gonna say this to Judy. I don't know what the weather is like in New Jersey, but here in Seattle, we have gorgeous sunshine.
We have sunshine. I'm gonna go clean my car out because I'm getting.
Yeah, or take a walk.
That's what I'm doing.
And just kind of let this all sink in. No,
Yeah.
this is.
I think we had more like Seattle weather today. Rain, rain, rain.
Yeah, well, there you go. Right, we swapped.
We did. All right. Thank you all very, very
Thank you
much.
very
Okay.
much.
Thank you very much.
See you
Great.
guys again when we do this, because every time I hear it, I'll learn something new. So,
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's nice
Okay.
to hear. That's really nice to hear. I will send you a copy of the the recording for today, and I will send links to those programs that we went to, and I'll hopefully have some notes for you so that
That'd be great.
you have the stuff that's not in the programs and the things that we talked about today. Okay.
thank
So,
you.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Spread
All
the
right.
word.
Good night,
Yeah.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.